From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Gulf Coast studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. It's Andre Johnson.
Junior.
Not forget the Junior. Very important. Remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, to share, to rate, to review. If you're watching us on YouTube, you already know. Do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Get the bell notification. But when we drop that, fire content. Also, hello, Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us here. And as we always say, please stay here. Tell your friends. A lot of great content on this network known as the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. It is Friday. Hope you all have had a good week. There has been, I guess you could call it a pretty good week for the Saints as they enter the first week of the offseason. A lot of optimism surrounding the New Orleans Saints. Not a good week around the NFL for 8 NFL coaches who were fired. That's a quarter of the league, 25%. They don't say NFL not for long for nothing. Yep. Very curious to see how that shakes out. And just curious if a few names on the Saints staff get a couple calls for potential interviews, if not for head coaching positions, but also could be other positions on those respective staffs. We'll see. That'll take care of itself. As for the Saints, right now, it's all about the Saints offseason and looking ahead. So we're going to get into that. But first things first, how you feeling?
It feels a little weird, Sean. You know, we're still coming out the football season, and normally at this time we'd be really diving into the next matchup that the Saints had. We are not doing that. But I will say there is one thing I'm glad we're not doing, and it's something we were doing at this time last year. You mentioned the coaches that are getting fired.
Yep.
We were talking about potential coaches, who the Saints should want here. Is it Kellen Moore? Is it Ben Johnson? Is it Aaron Glenn?
Cliff Kingsbury.
Man, we were talking quarterbacks and coaches. But one thing I know for sure that we will not be talking about this offseason is quarterbacks and coaches unless we have a particular topic today where we're not necessarily diving into Tyler Shuck and whether he's the future. It's more about the room as a whole, because when you look at that room, you've got Tyler Shuck as the starter. You've got Spencer Rattler as the backup. Jake Hayner was back and forth on the practice squad. You've got Taysom Hill doing whatever Taysom Hill did. That's what you had in 2025. But as you head into 2026, the quarterback position, most important in football, should the Saints quarterback room stay the same going into the new season?
Absolutely not. Thank you and good night. See you guys later. But look, let's get into it. That's the big picture topic, and I thought it was very interesting that we brought it up because it came up in the end-of-year press conference. It came up with Chris Olave. It came up, what's interesting is I said this on a couple of shows we've done, is just how often you will hear a coach, you will hear a player, and I'm not talking about just any old player, like prominent player, bring up Tyler Shuck's name, unsolicited, unprovoked, not asked about him. And they will bring his name up. He's the guy, Andre. Everyone understands that. He is the guy. So with that in mind, let me just flat out say there has to be a veteran addition to this room, especially if Taysom Hill hangs it up. The Saints quarterback room in 2026 has to look different. The bottom line is, as I said, Tyler Shuck is the guy. Everyone knows it. Everyone understands it. They can be diplomatic about how the season went and other guys that played the position. The bottom line is Tyler Shuck is the guy. And every move this organization makes this offseason, at least offensively, should be made with that as your guiding principle. We have our guy. We have our guy we can win with. How do we enhance that ability for him to win? Thus, we all win and win games as New Orleans Saints, as the franchise. So what would enhance Shuck's growth more in his second year? A savvy veteran who would understand his role, but has been there and done that, or a third-year player with starter aspirations. It shouldn't be hard to figure out where you should answer that. To me, the answer is obvious. It's not even close. The Saints need to hit the veteran backup market. They need to add a Mason Rudolph type. I would say Gardner Minshew, but he tore his ACL. Cooper Rush. I wouldn't have a problem with Jameis Winston, to be honest, because I think at this point in his career, he understands where he's at. A Teddy Bridgewater, if you want to go to another past Saints backup. I think that would be most beneficial. Why do I say that? I always go back to conversations we would have in training camp and even in the regular season, off-season, with Drew. When Drew was not new here, when Drew was in his 10th year here, he would always bring up how much he respected and valued the presence of Luke McCown, who was a veteran backup quarterback who had started a few games, but had been there, done that, who understood his role. Drew was always very, very complimentary of the trusted set of eyes that Luke McCown provided. That's exactly what Tyler Shough needs, a trusted set of veteran eyes who knows his role in year number 2. Because it's not year number 10 for Tyler Shough. It's year number 2, and there are going to be challenges in year number 2. We have tried our best to illustrate that and express that on this podcast over the last couple of weeks. We heard Mickey Loomis talk about it yesterday, and it's all very true. So how do you help when those inevitable challenges? Well, it's to have a veteran presence in that quarterback room. And look, we overlooked Taysom Hill's presence this year in that room because he was injured and we just didn't really factor it in. But clearly he played a big role. He played the veteran presence in that role. But if you do not have him next year, you're going to need that guy. Also the injury rate is high in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And to me, if you have 5 or 6 games without Shough, 4 games without Shough, he has to miss any time. I've always said a good backup can do just enough to come in, operate the offense, and keep you above water with a 500 record. So if it's 4 games, he can get you 2 wins. That's what you need. And for whatever reason, the injury rate is just going higher and higher, it feels like, in the NFL. I would love to see a study on that. As for who is in there now behind Shough, let's start with Spencer Rattler. If they bring in a vet, what should the Saints do with Spencer Rattler? Look, I said it earlier. We heard Chris Olave vouch for him. I thought that was very important for him to go out of his way. You talk about unsolicited. He brought that up without being asked about Spencer Rattler. You heard Kellen Moore talk about him. Clearly, there was a respect for what he was able to do, his improvement that he showed last year to this year, to at least get to a baseline level of competency at the quarterback position. And I have absolutely no problem with Spencer Rattler wanting to continue and keep his starter dreams alive. He absolutely should. He's a young player. But his days of competing to be a starter here in New Orleans are done. They're over. It's done. So if I were him, at his age, his experience, I would welcome a trade or a release. If I'm the Saints, I would be on the phone as soon as I can to just kind of poke around, because it wasn't that long ago Spencer Rattler was drafted. There's a lot of people out at separate teams that drafted him that did think enough of him to bring him to New Orleans. I would at least make a call to see if maybe you can get a 5th-round pick, a 4th-round pick, a 6th-round pick, heck, a 7th-round pick. But if that does not materialize, I do think you would have to strongly consider releasing him. Now, if you bring in a veteran backup where he's a clear-cut 2, that wouldn't be good to Rattler to bump him down to 3. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I want to avoid any sort of controversy that could potentially emerge. And I think that's where the Saints would have to look at when it comes to Spencer Rattler. So to me, option 1 would be trade, option 2 would be release, and we'll see if there's a veteran here. I guess you could stick around as the number 3, but you want to avoid any sort of controversy, any kind of drama involving that, because it's pretty clear Shough is the guy, and there's no more quarterback competition. That's the way you would handle Spencer Rattler. As for Jake Haener, I say this with all due respect because I do respect him a lot.
Yep.
I would pull a Kellen Moore if I were Jake Haener. I would look to get on the coaching staff if I were Jake Haener. That's what Kellen Moore did when he was in Dallas. At some point, he realized where he was as a player, and he joined the coaching staff. And look at him now. I think Jake Haener is easily the most effective communicator in that locker room, in that quarterback room, of quarterback concepts, offense, things to do. The way he explains stuff, you understand it. I mean, you really get it. I remember his first press conference in training camp. He held court like he was the starter. I mean, he's got that gift. And I do think he's a very intelligent football player. I just think he has a long way to go just to be a competent backup in the NFL. So if I were him, I would look to join the coaching staff. But if I were the Saints, probably would have to look to move on at some point from Jake Haener. If you kept him around as a practice squad guy, that's fine. But I do think ultimately his future is probably not going to be here. And maybe he wants to develop into a backup quarterback. We'll see what happens there. But I just don't think that's going to happen here in New Orleans. So to me, the quarterback room should look significantly different last year because you're going to have Shuck as QB1. And I think QB2, in my opinion, should be a veteran that's a proven backup in the NFL that knows how to win games, that could be a valuable asset to Tyler Shuck. What about you?
Should the Saints quarterback room remain the same in 2026? I'm with you. Big old no. Because one thing they did in 2025, I think certain members of the fan base underestimated it. I think certain members of the media maybe underestimated it. I think the Saints themselves underestimated it. The importance of a vet in the room. Because you kind of get into the trap, and we've seen it said, we even speculated about it on this podcast. Kellen Moore, former NFL quarterback. Doug Nussmeier, former NFL quarterback. The quarterback coach, Scott Tolzien, former NFL quarterback. So you kind of fall into the trap of, oh, well, you don't necessarily need a veteran quarterback in the room because you've got 3 guys who played quarterback. And in certain instances, that does help. You know, hey, throw this pass like this. When you're looking at this read it like this. Do this, do that. With the X's and O's, sure. But you talked about Drew Brees, one guy who I listen to a lot. Cam Newton talked about Derek Anderson when he was a rookie.
Yes, I remember that pod, yeah.
Cam Newton came in and Derek Anderson was a rookie. And Cam, just like Tyler Shuck, the franchise is in his hands. We know moving forward, Cam Newton is the quarterback in Carolina. But Cam Newton learned more than from anybody else, according to Cam, from Derek Anderson, a longtime veteran in the room. Because when Cam is showing up 2 hours early for practice at 8 o'clock, Derek Anderson's been there since 5:30 a.m., studying, showered, chewing tobacco, doing whatever. Cam's looking at that and saying, how can I be a leader of this team if other people are getting here before me? So from the X's and O's perspective, sure, Kellen, Scott, Doug, they can all help Tyler Shuck. But showing you how to lead, leading by example, being somebody who's been there, done that, and having that as a peer and not as a coach, because a coach can only do so much for you.
Exactly.
I think everyone underestimated the importance of that. So that's something I really want to see the Saints invest into in 2026, because I think not having one, obviously Taysom was there, but Taysom obviously his hands are in a lot of different cups, and he was injured a lot. I think not having a veteran quarterback in the room kind of hurt Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler, and even Jake Hayner, because you got 3 young guys who were in that quarterback room. So I really want them to invest in a veteran quarterback. And when you look at the upcoming list of quarterbacks that are going to be free agents this offseason, Joe Flacco, Russell Wilson, Teddy Bridgewater, Gardner Minshew, you mentioned he's coming off that injury though, Carson Wentz, Tyrod Taylor, Jameis Winston. If you could trade a 7th rounder for Jameis Winston, I'd argue that would be worth it. You know, I'm looking for a veteran quarterback that knows where they are in their career.
That's exactly right.
Someone who doesn't think they're coming here to resurrect their career, like Geno Smith was able to do, like Sam Darnold was able to do, like Baker Mayfield was able to do, like Mac Jones and Malik Willis are trying to do right now. Someone who's been there, done that, understands my day is coming into a season as a starter is over, but I can help a young guy, and when called upon, I can go out there and do my thing and make real good money sitting on the bench. That's the kind of guy I'm looking for to be a vet for the Saints. Another big thing, and you touched on that, someone who can step in and win games. I mean, Tyler Shuck, the reality is what it is. No quarterback has a 100% game played ratio. Somebody is going to get hurt one time or another, whether it's illness, whether it's whatever. Your backup quarterback is going to have to come in and play. It happened for Manning, Breeze, Brady, Rodgers, any great quarterback you name, their backup has had to come in and play a game because of injury at one point or another. And you need somebody who can win games. I said I expect the Saints to be in a playoff push next year. If the Saints are 8-5 and Tyler Shuck goes down for 3 games, you need somebody who can step in and keep you above water so that when Shuck comes back, he's not coming back to a sinking ship. And when I look at what you've got on the roster, Spencer Rattler, when it comes to coming in and winning games, just look at his track record. He has not had a great track record when it comes to being able to win games. 1-13 in the games he played, and that's when he was a starter getting 90% of the reps with the starting lineup. Now you're putting him in a position where he's going to be getting 10% of the reps. practice squad backups, and you're expecting him to come in and do something he wasn't able to do in a better situation. So I don't know if I don't think that Spencer Rattler is that guy. Jake Haener, he hasn't showed you anything to prove that he's that guy, you know? So I think you got to move on from Rattler and Haener. Like you said, if I can trade Rattler to somebody who maybe believes in him, like a Clint Kubiak who invested so much in the Spencer Rattler in 2024, maybe I can do that. That would be my first option. Jake Haener, obviously someone you're not going to trade. No. Even if you release him, it's difficult because there's really no film on Jake Haener. He doesn't have much of a resume in the NFL. He only had that one start where he got benched at halftime against Washington.
Went bad.
Yeah, exactly. He came in, pitched relief a few times, but he didn't necessarily change anyone's life during that time. The most he has to his name is, you know, a couple really good training camps. So maybe somebody who saw him in training camp would, you know, see if those tires still had any skid to them. But I don't think that there's much of a market for Jake Haener.
No.
So maybe you can trade Rattler, get rid of Haener, bring in a veteran quarterback, and really use that veteran to invest in Tyler Shuck, the guy who you've put your hand on his shoulder and said, you are the future for the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways you can look at it. I mean, you know, in certain ways you can say, well, you know, if Shuck's got Rattler kind of nipping at his heels, that will only make him better. And I think that's good in a quarterback competition. I don't think that's good when I got the guy established. And every franchise wants to get to where they have their guy. Saints have it. So now you kind of want to nurture that guy. You want to make sure that he's got everything possible to succeed, and thus the team has everything possible to succeed. And you mentioned something about the playoffs. That's part of the formula. You got to think of that stuff. I think back to the year the Saints traded for Teddy.
Yeah.
Up until that time, Breeze was an Iron Man. And all of a sudden, he got hurt for 5 games that year. Teddy comes in. Now, he went 5-0. They won different ways, but they still won. And when Breeze came back, boom, everything was fine. So he kept the ship afloat. The following year, they had Taysom and Jameis. I think in season, they went with Taysom that year. They went 3-1.
Yeah.
I think it was 2020. Yeah, I think that was 2020. And the Saints were able to get, obviously, to the playoffs. So everything was kept afloat with the player that you turn to in that backup role. So to me, it's a very important part of the process, part of the puzzle that gets severely overlooked. But there is a market, there's a group of these guys that are comfortable in this role, that are perfectly fine and understand and embrace that situation. And if you're the Saints, that's who you got to go get. Because I think developing young guys is fine. You had a chance to do that this year. I mean, I remember Hunter Deckers, which I'm still not quite sure the experiment there, because I never saw him get a physical rep except once in an OTA. But I think let's now devote resources to raising the bar, and raising the bar is getting this young quarterback who we believe can be a franchise guy, getting him to that higher level.
One more question that I have for you based on something you said, and really something Chris Olave said. You know, when he came out unsolicited, nobody asked him about it and said, you know, I believe Spencer Rattler can be a starter in this league. If the Saints were to move on from Spencer Rattler, do you think he could go somewhere else and be a starter?
He's not going to ever get a job. It's not going to be handed to him. It would have to be a situation like he just found himself very fortunate to be in this year, where he happened to be the guy with the most experience in a quarterback room. I think wherever he goes, I think he can be a very capable backup. I think he could be, and if he keeps working and developing, he could be a high-end backup. And what is a high-end backup? I mean, eventually he can be a guy that they turn to, where they trust in these types of situations that we were just describing. Be that veteran guy at some point in his career that they turn to and say, oh yeah, that's a valuable number 2 right there. So I think at best he can be a spot starter, but it's never going to be, barring crazy set of circumstances, maybe he goes somewhere and they got a rookie quarterback and they want to bridge the gap, maybe something like that. Or there's an injury to a starter, like he got the opportunity to start here when Derek Carr went down, or the weird kind of situation he had. Well, think about all that had to happen. Yeah. Carr got injured, then he retired, then they had, they spent a second-round pick on a rookie, and they had Jake Haener. That was the incredibly fortunate set of circumstances for Spencer Rattler. So I don't want to say his starting days are done, because I think there's a chance he will start a game at some point in his career again. But I do think here his days of competing for the starting job are over. And if that's what you want, an opportunity to compete, it's probably going to have to be elsewhere.
He's a very unique situation, because most fifth-round draft picks don't play as much as he did as early in their careers. So when you look at guys who kind of follow maybe a trajectory in their career that maybe Spencer Rattler could follow, I'm thinking, Malik Willis, who, got drafted, was a starter, it didn't work out, bounced around from team to team. He got a chance in Green Bay because of some injuries and some playoff positioning, and he impressed. So there may be someone willing to invest in Malik Willis. Mac Jones, drafted to be the future in New England. It didn't work in New England. He goes to Jacksonville, shows just enough to get a spot in San Francisco. All of a sudden, Brock Purdy goes down. Mac Jones balls out, and you're looking at Mac Jones like maybe
he still got a little something left.
Maybe we could work with that.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones, who got pushed out of New York, gets to Indianapolis, and all of a sudden the Colts were pushing for a playoff spot before he got hurt. So maybe he can follow one of those trajectories. But once again, those guys, Malik Willis was a second rounder. Mac Jones, first rounder. Daniel Jones, first rounder. Those are opportunities that first and second round guys that a lot of teams probably wanted coming out of college. You look at them further down the line, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, and say, this guy was top tier coming out of college. He didn't work with his first stop, but maybe we can fix that. Spencer Rattler is a different situation because he was a fifth-round pick. So you're looking at that and, maybe, again, a Clint Kubiak, a coach that's familiar with him, a Dennis Allen, somebody who has been in that position and knows Spencer Rattler, somebody who was impressed by the games he played would say maybe there's something there that we can tap into once again as a backup and
develop
one thing leads to another. Maybe he gets a spot here and there and proves that he has the ability to do this like these other quarterbacks, but it's really hard to picture that because we've never really seen it like that from a fifth rounder.
Yeah, it's hard to even have a reasonable comp for something like that. I mean, you look at, I'm trying to think the latest drafted quarterback is obviously Brock Purdy. He didn't get the starter job through the front door. I mean, he had to basically it was a crazy set of circumstances with Trey Lance, and he was there, and obviously he's excelled, and he's got a brilliant head coach. It's a hard comp. I mean, it's funny, we talked about win-loss record a lot with Spencer Rattler, and then I look at your guy, Shador, who I think people would realistically look at the way he's played and say, okay, he's a rookie, he made some mistakes, he's not there yet, and there's still a legitimate question about whether or not he can be a starter. But he still won 3 games.
You see what I'm
saying? How many games?
Might have been 4.
Was it 4?
Out of 3 or 4. Yeah.
In 7 or 8 starts? So he still had a
when they had one win,
reasonable. And I don't know where Shador's going to land, but they're still talking about him. Is he really a starter? Is he not? Is he a starter? Is he not? So now you turn it to Rattler, who had how many? 15 opportunities, 14 opportunities, and only won 1 game. That's why. It is the main thing, but it's not the main thing. But when you talk about kind of these tiebreakers, so to speak, you do got to look at the win-loss record. And he just hasn't been able to get enough victories. And I think you heard Kellen Moore kind of slip it in a little bit when he was talking about the process. Yep. He didn't do it in a disrespectful way, but he definitely weren't having success as a team, sort of thing. I think that's where it boils down to. But I think he needs to go to a spot where he can develop, and it might be better for him the inverse, where he goes where there's an established veteran and he can learn from a guy like that. And maybe get an opportunity down the road. But we'll see. But I just know this, the 2026 quarterback room has to look significantly different. And to me, there has to be an established backup in that room, an established veteran to get the best out of Tyler Shough.
Absolutely, because Rattler, Haener, Shough, we went through the quarterback carousel. One man came out, it's Tyler Shough. That's the guy you've got moving forward. Everything this offseason needs to be investing in Tyler Shough, whether it's a veteran mentor, whether it's pieces across the offensive line, playmakers for him to throw to, defense, so that he doesn't have to score as many points to win a game. Like this year you had a top 10 defense. That's what you need to spend this offseason doing. But you're going to be spending a lot of other things this offseason, like money. Typically at this time of year, we're talking about how did the Saints clear $90 million in cap. They don't have nearly as much work to do this offseason, Sean.
No, they don't. And I check over the cap a lot. Right now they have them at 19 over, which is actually a little higher than I thought. But like I said, usually it's 70, 80, 90. What's important to point out is the salary cap figure for 2026 has not been established yet. It's generally been a little higher than it's been projected. So if that is indeed the case, if it's higher, then obviously the overage goes down a little bit. But 19.5 is chump change. That's chump change for the Saints. I mean, they've had to clear $90 million in cap space before with, crazy voidable years and crazy amounts of restructures and all pay cuts and all those types of things. But 19.5 million, that can be wiped out in basically no time. I pinpointed 3 moves that I think could essentially happen that I think are realistic. One, if you restructure a guy where you knock down the base salary, convert it to a signing bonus, spread it out over the life of the contract, you want to do that with a guy in his prime who has a higher base salary because the further along you get in the contract, it gets more expensive to release that player. That's why you want to do a guy in their prime, not someone older in their careers, which they've made the mistake of doing at times. That's why I think the most obvious restructure candidate is going to be Chase Young. He's got a $14 million base salary. You could probably clear 8, 9, 10 million in cap space or you can, lower the cap number, 8, 9, 10 million in cap space, which would drop it down to 10 million over. And then the other big one is going to be Chris Olave. The 15 million he's on the books for, it's not going to stay that way. They're going to work out some kind of extension, or they need to work out some kind of extension, and that can lower that cap number by 8, 9, 10 million dollars. So you're probably already there. And then the other one is going to be, what do they do with the Alvin Kamara contract? Is it a pay cut? Does he retire? Is it a post-June 1st cut? So I do think the salary cap is going to be important, but like Mickey said, Kai Harley is not going to be nearly as busy this offseason than he has in years past.
Absolutely. You mentioned Chris Olave, and just looking ahead, because, we keep this thing rolling all through the offseason, this podcast. They've got a lot of big decisions to make. Chris Olave is one of them. We got to see what's going on with the older guys. Taysom Hill, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan. Chris Rumph II, who quietly had a pretty solid year. A locker room leader in Foster Moreau, who's set to become an unrestricted free agent. You're looking at Alontae Taylor. You've got to make a decision on him.
Yep.
So there's a lot of guys who have contributed to this team over the years that you've got some pretty big decisions coming up. So while Kyle Hurley and Mickey Loomis don't have to clear $100 million in cap room, they do have some big decisions coming up. Yeah,
and they've got what every franchise covets, a stud young quarterback on a rookie contract. The Saints have never had that. They haven't had that in a long time. I don't think they've had that in the salary cap era. All right, we got to get out of here. Andre Johnson Jr., Sean Fazende will catch you guys next week on Overtime.